The sun gave forth its light without brightness. Imagine waking up at noon to a dim, gray sky. No brightness, no warmth, as if an endless eclipse has blanketed the earth. In the year 536 AD, this nightmare was reality. Day after day, the sun was pale blue and cast no shadows at midday. Temperatures plunged. Summer felt like winter. Crops failed across continents. Something catastrophic had happened, and people thought it was the end of the world. Welcome to what some historians call the worst year in human history. It all began in early 536. Without warning, a strange gloom fell over much of the northern hemisphere. Midday looked like dusk. As one Roman historian recorded, the sun had a bluish color, and it no longer gave its usual light. People shivered as summer temperatures dropped by as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius below normal, a colossal plunge. There were frosts during harvest time and snow in summer. Across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, crops withered in the fields, triggering famine. The Irish chronicles speak of a failure of bread in the year 536. In other words, mass starvation. Villagers huddled around fires at noon. Imagine the terror. Days of darkness stretching into weeks, then months. The chaos was global. In China, records describe yellow dust rain and cold skies, a strange fog that made the sun dim. Summer snow devastated crops in Korea and Japan. In Mesoamerica, archaeological evidence suggests droughts and crop failures around this time as well. The Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, was hit hard. Clouded skies and poor harvests threatened an empire already battling wars. Cities ran out of grain. People weakened by hunger were susceptible to disease. This was not just bad weather. It was a worldwide catastrophe unfolding in real time. Mothers could not feed their children. Rulers prayed for sunlight to return. What could cause such a profound and persistent darkness, a chilling cold that settled across the entire known world? For those living through it, the sun, the very source of life and warmth, seemed to be failing. The question was not just a curiosity. It was a terrifying existential mystery that hung in the air as thick as the dust itself. To the people of the 6th century, the answer could only be supernatural. Without the lens of modern science, they turned to the frameworks they knew. Faith and folklore. This had to be a sign of God's wrath, a punishment for humanity's sins, or a powerful evil omen foretelling the end of days. It was a divine judgment written across the sky. But nearly 1,500 years later, modern science would finally solve the cold case. The clues weren't found in ancient texts, but frozen in time, deep within the polar ice sheets. Here, scientists uncovered the true culprit, a volcanic cataclysm of immense proportions. Ice core samples drilled from Greenland and Antarctica act as a precise atmospheric archive. They revealed massive, unmistakable spikes in sulfate aerosols, tiny particles of sulfuric acid, precisely dated to the year 536 AD. This was the smoking gun. This chemical signature points to only one phenomenon: one or more colossal volcanic eruptions, powerful enough to blast millions of tons of ash and sulfur dioxide, not just into the air, but high into the stratosphere. Up there, above the weather, the particles didn't rain out. Instead, they were caught by high-altitude winds and spread across the entire northern hemisphere. Further analysis of the ice revealed a second and possibly a third major eruption, followed in quick succession around the year 540, compounding the disaster. The result was a dense, reflective veil of aerosols that encircled the globe, blocking a significant portion of incoming sunlight and dramatically cooling the Earth. It was a volcanic winter, nature's own version of a nuclear winter. The people of 536 had no way of knowing this, of course. They couldn't comprehend the atmospheric chemistry or the distant geological violence that had upended their world. They only saw the perpetually dark skies and felt the relentless, bitter chill. As if famine and cold weren't enough, an even worse blow was coming. In 541 AD, taking advantage of millions weakened by hunger, the Plague of Justinian struck. A deadly strain of bubonic plague spread like wildfire through the Eastern Roman, Byzantine Empire, and beyond. Millions died, perhaps up to half the population in affected areas. The volcanic winters of 536 to 540 had set the stage. Communities were vulnerable, trade routes disrupted. Now plague caused societies to crumble further. The economy of Europe stagnated, fields went untended. It seemed like the apocalypse had arrived, with darkness in the sky and death on the ground. Historian Michael McCormick notes this period ushered in one of the worst times to be alive, if not the worst year on record. And yet, against the backdrop of a world plunged into a seemingly endless twilight, people did survive 536 and its aftermath. Faced with a catastrophe of planetary scale, one that defied all explanation and prayer, the simple, stubborn instinct to endure took hold. Human resilience, it turns out, is a truly remarkable force. It wasn't a grand, heroic struggle, but a quiet, day-by-day battle fought in countless homes and villages against the cold, the gloom, and the gnawing hunger. Survival demanded radical adaptation. Communities, watching their crops fail in the frigid, sunless summers, were forced to innovate or perish. They turned to their larders, carefully rationing what little stored grain they had. When that ran out, they scoured the land for anything edible. In Ireland and Scandinavia, desperate people dug up fern roots, grinding the tough, fibrous material into a coarse flour to bake a barely palatable bread. Elsewhere, they turned to acorns, bark, and moss, foods of last resort that offered meager sustenance. This was the new reality, a constant, exhausting search for calories in a world that refused to provide. Governments, where they still functioned, were overwhelmed. The Byzantine Emperor Justinian, ruling from a Constantinople shrouded in dust, ordered the imperial granaries open to feed the starving populace. But this act of state charity was a drop in an ocean of need. The logistical challenge of distributing food across a failing empire was immense, and the supplies could never be enough to stave off mass hunger. These efforts, while significant, often highlighted the terrifying limits of centralized power in the face of global collapse. Some societies were better equipped by geography and tradition. In the high Andes of South America, communities had long cultivated the hardy potato, a crop naturally resilient to cold and frost. They may have shifted their agriculture to rely even more heavily on this staple. Crucially, they possessed ancient knowledge of food preservation, freeze-drying potatoes into a lightweight, long-lasting substance called chuño, creating a vital food reserve that could last for years. These strategies weren't universally available or always successful, but they reveal the ingenuity of our ancestors. They fought back with the only tools they had: knowledge, community, and an unbreakable will to see the sun again. Slowly, painstakingly, over more than a decade, the skies began to clear. By 547 AD, the worst of the volcanic dust had finally settled from the stratosphere. The sun, for so long a pale disk in a murky sky, began to reclaim its warmth and light. The climate started a gradual, uneven recovery. The worst was over, but the world that emerged from the darkness was forever changed. The long winter and the subsequent plague had fractured empires, depopulated cities, and severed trade routes. The Byzantine and Sasanian empires were severely weakened. Meanwhile, in regions like the Arabian Peninsula, which may have been spared the most extreme cold, societal structures remained more intact. This created a power vacuum, setting the stage for the dramatic rise of a new force, Islam. In the following century, a shift in world history likely accelerated by the decade the sun disappeared. 15 centuries later, scientists and historians still talk about 536 AD. Why? Because it stands as a warning. The world faced a global climatic catastrophe, and it could happen again. In 1816, known as the Year Without a Summer, the eruption of Mount Tambora lowered global temperatures by about 0.5 degrees Celsius, causing widespread crop failures. Much milder than 536, but still devastating. Imagine a Tambora-sized or larger eruption today. ash could blanket the sky, global harvests could collapse, and modern civilization would be put to the test. The story of 536 AD teaches us how fragile our food systems and societies can be in the face of sudden climate shocks. But it also teaches about resilience. Humanity survived the dark years through cooperation, adaptation, and sheer perseverance. In the end, the darkest year in history is more than just a chilling story. It's a profound lesson, a warning etched not in stone, but in the planet's own memory banks, the frozen archives of its ice sheets, and the silent testimony of its ancient trees. For centuries, the truth of 536 AD lay dormant, a mystery locked away. But by learning to read these natural records, we've uncovered a story written by the Earth itself, a story of sudden, catastrophic change. It's a stark reminder that the world we know, the stability we take for granted, rests on a delicate balance. 536 AD reminds us that our planet can transform suddenly and without warning, plunging us into trials that few can imagine. The event demonstrated with brutal clarity how a single disruption in one part of the world can trigger a cascade of failures across the globe. Our own civilization, with its intricate supply chains and dense populations, is in many ways even more vulnerable. The year 536 is a stress test from the past, showing us exactly where the breaking points are. Yet, it also shows that even in the face of a winter without a sun, humanity can endure. The survivors of 536 didn't just passively wait for the sky to clear, they adapted, they innovated, they found new ways to store food, new crops to plant, and new reasons to cooperate. In the deepest darkness, they proved that our greatest resource isn't the sun in the sky, but the resilience and ingenuity within our communities. By studying these past events, we arm ourselves with the most powerful tool of all, knowledge. We can now model the atmospheric effects of a supervolcano, predict its impact on global agriculture, and develop strategies to mitigate the fallout. We are no longer blind to the threat. The next time a volcano of this magnitude blows, or any global disaster looms, we won't be as mystified as the people of 536. We will see it for what it is, a challenge to our systems, a test of our resolve. And we will know that the answer lies not in fear, but in banding together to survive. History, science, and the enduring human story all intertwine in the tale of the dark year. It's a story of profound despair, but it is also, ultimately, a story of hope rising with the sun. If you found this journey through the past illuminating, consider subscribing for more eye-opening history and science stories. The lessons of 536 AD teach us that foresight and preparation are not abstract concepts, they are the cornerstones of survival. After all, the more we explore our world's mysteries and understand its past warnings, the better prepared we are for whatever the future holds.